Hey everyone, welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy, I'm the host of the show, and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California, slowly going insane from being inside for over a year. But the finish line, folks, is in sight. I got vaccination 1, and Honestly, though, I did get vaccination 1, but the purgatory now of waiting, I think makes it worse. Every day is a struggle. Hey, how are you doing? Oh boy, today's guest. I'm very excited to talk to today's guest, Hans-Joachim Roedelius. Now, if you don't know who Hans-Joachim is, why don't I read you his bio right now? A pioneer in the field of electronic music, Hans-Joachim Roedelius is considered one of the founders of contemporary popular electronic music. Born in Berlin in 1934, Hans-Joachim starred as a child actor in a number of UFA films, and during the war was an unwilling member of the German youngsters in the Hitler Youth, membership being mandatory for all boys from the age of 10. But during the time, he also appeared in several propaganda films. He fled Berlin in 1943, moving from one place to another before being conscripted into the National People's Army of the German Democratic Republic, East Germany. Again, he took flight, only to end up in prison. He trained as a male nurse, then as a hospice orderly. Having relocated from East to West Berlin, he went on to meander through Europe as a Thatcher, detective, masseur, bartender, and cleaning toilets, among many other things, before finally becoming a freelance artist with avant-garde music his prime focus. In 1968, Hans-Joachim co-founded the music commune known as Human Being and co-formed Zodiac Free Arts Lab, the center of Berlin's underground culture at the time, with conceptual artist Konrad Schnitzler. He formed, this is long, but I think it's important because it sets up what we're going to talk about. He formed Cluster years later, and then Harmonia with Neu guitarist Michael Rother. In the decade since then, he recorded dozens upon dozens of albums, both solo and in collaboration with everyone from Brian Eno to Tim Story. And their album, Lunch 3 from 2019, is spectacular. It's one of my favorite albums of the last couple years. And Hans-Joachim's latest album, Drauf und Dran, an album of piano compositions, was released late last year. It's also great. This is a huge honor. I will say this, though, and you'll probably figure this out for yourself. But this is probably one of the more difficult interviews I've done. There wasn't just generational and language differences. Although I will say I think most of the disconnect probably came from linguistic differences, because English is not Hans-Joachim's first language, and I have a child's understanding of German. But here's the other thing. His youth was spent mostly in Nazi Germany, and I didn't want to make him relive that hell just for a podcast. And also the thing is, he's written a memoir about his life. And, you can always just read that, his own words, if you want to find out the dirt. So I thought I'd take a more philosophical approach, as I am wont to do on this show. And, well, buddy, let me tell you, if there is one thing that doesn't translate well, it is philosophical concepts. I should have known that from the fact that I almost got my PhD in philosophy. And reading Heidegger is extremely difficult in English. I bet probably difficult in German, too. The thing is, though, I think we did get to a lot of interesting things. We talked a lot about faith and being creative through wartime. And there's a lot of other stuff in there, so I hope you enjoy it. If you do, why not subscribe to the show? You can do that on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Amazon, Google, Spotify, basically wherever you get your podcast from. And if this is your first time listening to Beginnings, and you're like, all right, I like this. Well, what about some other episodes? Because I've been doing this for 11 years. If you don't want to wade through, let me recommend a couple episodes based on my guest today. I've talked to plenty of people in Hans-Joachim's neck of the woods, neck of the musical woods. Ardo Lindsay, Colin Newman of Wire, David Harrington of Kronos Quartet, Thurston Moore. Just talked to Bobby Previtt a couple episodes ago, wonderful jazz drummer and composer. Hey, and coming up on the show, so you might want to subscribe, I talked to Terry Riley, who basically created minimalism as a genre. Just one of the most amazing musical forces of the 20th century. So stay tuned for that. If you want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram, I'm at Andy Beckerman. And I guess that's about it for now. So without any further ado, here is my talk from a couple months ago, actually, with Hans-Joachim. Not to jump right into it, but you're from Germany, right?
Yeah.
Coming from a country with such a long history, I feel like it roots people more than being from like America. If you're not Native American, the history here is a couple hundred years at best. Whereas if you're from Europe, your family can go back, thousands of years.
Yeah, that's true.
And I wonder if that gives you a more rooted feeling. I know that's.
It's not my fault, and it doesn't matter. In fact, I'm still very, very glad that America freed Europe from the Nazis, from Hitler. So that was really something which shouldn't be forgotten forever.
Yeah. I think that's interesting. Do you see? You were born in the early 30s. Do you see any kind of resonance, or I guess the quote is like, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Do you see any kind of like rhyming with the current era and maybe the era that you grew up in?
I don't think that many people are aware of what was. They don't care of history because it's so difficult to live in nowadays with all the circumstances, with COVID but we have to think a lot about what we did in the past, which went wrong, so that we have to bear what we have to bear now. It's not only it's not an innocent personality who should be. Was heißt das? My English vocabulary is not very good. Responsible. We are all responsible. Our ancestors somehow, but we can't claim for. They knew what they knew, so they had to do it in a way, and. What came out, I think it's what we see now, the awareness of what happened in the last 100 years. I think it's enough for normal people that they are aware that America freed Europe from Hitler. That the Russians, of course, as well. It's not only, or it weren't only the Americans, but. We got a lot of gifts, the German-speaking or the European countries, from our neighbors and also from over the ocean.
You grew up mostly you were a teenager in the post-war period, right?
Yeah.
So, do you think that's really like where you started to form as a person in the post-war period? Or do you think you already had a personality that had been kind of forming already?
I think I'm very privileged because I had such a rich life. I was born before the Nazis came. I was with the Nazis, I was with the communists, and now I'm with the capitalists. And my original profession is physiotherapist and guider of the dying. So I had to do with many people. And I listened to many people, to all their stories. like a preacher. It was they told me everything from their personal faiths. So I'm aware of how difficult it is to become aware of what's really going to happen, and to take the right decisions afterwards.
I guess I'm curious about, like, because you did have, like, but before you started making music,
Yeah,
right? You lived you lived a lot. What other people might be like, oh yeah, that was my entire life. You lived like a full life, and then you lived another full life as a musician almost.
yeah.
I'm kind of curious about how that early period kind of gave you the foundation to become a musician. To become, I mean, I love your music. Like pretty much every stage of you being a musician, I think is amazing. So I'm kind of curious about like what in this early period was a foundation for that.
I think it's from my ancestors. My ancestors were teachers, preachers, cantors, musicians. So I'm sure that if you live a life with open ears and eyes, you can get aware of what's going to happen, what you have to do. It's not. I think it's a gift to be able to develop this. It's a big gift. It's not everybody can discover his own history and why is doing this or why he's doing that. That's sort of privilege, to be enabled to think about that and to do something with it. I wrote my autobiography because I got so much to know about people. Mm-hmm. About myself, my family, but about people, mainly about people. I touched thousands of bodies, and I heard thousands of histories, and this gave me the possibility to do what I'm doing.
I mean, what led you into being a physical therapist?
I wanted to become a doctor first, but the circumstances around were not didn't make it impossible. I was imprisoned in Eastern Germany. I came out. I was allowed to study physiotherapy and massage and being a guide of the dying. But when it started, when I started, that was my the basic study for becoming a doctor. But then I had to go away again from Eastern Germany, and it was not possible. So fortunately, I became an artist.
I mean, do you think there are connections between the two things? Right? I think you have to have like to have a sensitivity to listen to people while you are also feel like working on their bodies.
Yeah.
I feel like there is some kind of sensitivity that's in the same thing, like when you are making music in some way.
It's connected. It's connected. What I'm doing musically or art-wise in general is not far from it's tone art and healing art. They are somehow the same thing. Religion and music somehow they have some. There is some connection in between. So. Because I'm doing it out of my belly, because I want it, because I like it, because I think it's my profession, I'm doing it.
You know, in terms of religion, something I talk about on this show a lot is, and different guests have different takes on this, but I've always felt like faith is a bodily feeling. And some people think that it's more of like, if they have faith, it's just who they are. It's the state that they're in. And I'm kind of curious, you mentioned religion. What is your attitude towards religion? Are you a person of faith? How does that fit in with you as a musician?
I don't feel being a person in a normal life and a different person in my art life. It's all one. The basic is I'm born as like this. I found out that I have to do it. So there's no reason to bother about or to think about it in a different way.
So is it more of like I mean, making music in the sense then is like a calling, right? Like it's just you feel like you have to do it.
Yeah.
Did you always feel that, or was it something that only like once once you were in West Germany, in that scene, then you felt like, oh, I can play music, or did you feel that from when you were a child?
Oh, it all grew somehow in the right way after all that experience with people. It came to this point, and I think that the basic is people. The basic is in which way people are bounded to their opinions or what they think it's true, and whether it's true or not. But they have to just to follow what they think it's true, and I should write another book about that. It's very complex,
Yeah.
It's very complex.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I'm really interested in talking about these things, because it is such a complex, how we end up doing the things that we do. It's not just a linear kind of thing. It's comes from all that other directions. And, I think that's why I like talking about the early days of their lives, because I think that does set them off in a certain direction that eventually I do think there's something, you seem like a very sensitive person. I don't know you tell me if that's true or not. You seem sensitive, like a sensitive person, like someone who is like empathetic.
My antennas are open all the time.
I'm the same kind of way, and it's painful.
Yes, sometimes it's painful, but it's your fate. You have to do it. You have to follow. Your good Lord will do it with you.
But you seem at the very least very I struggle against it a lot. You seem like, well, this is my lot. This is who I am, and I'm going to play the game or play the hand that was dealt me.
Yeah, I remember a photo of me as a child when I came to the first day of my school, when I came in primary school. There is a photo with my mother on a place somewhere in Berlin, and I'm looking in the camera, and I see myself the same way like doing what I'm doing now. I see myself. I have the privilege to see what I am, and what I have to do. Of course, it's this big responsibility.
So that's interesting. For you, in your mind, the way that you exist, like it's almost like you unfurled from a child to your adult self now.
It's unfolding. Yes.
That's really interesting.
Like my music, now in the moment, I go a different way with music. I'm experimenting with my piano, and I'm experimenting with the interferences while it's hitting a key, waiting when the sound descends, and hitting the next key, and waiting what's going to happen in between the two sounds.
Oh, man.
It's so interesting. It's a new universe for me. It's so minimalistic. You really have to... it should be live always. People should attend the music around the piano so that they can follow the same thing I hear.
Yeah.
And I think that's my piano is a sort of healing instrument for myself. And I think it's also for people.
How so? I mean, it's to do that, to listen to sit there specifically and listen for the tones as it fades. And then as the other tone comes up, I mean, that takes a lot of patience and concentration, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that's part of that healing for you?
I'm just the instrument. I'm being it. I have to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it doesn't work at all.
But do you mean? But in terms of the way that the tones are interacting, it's almost like meditation. The way you're describing it.
Yeah. It's yoga. It's a yoga which is not so hard. You don't have to distort your body.
Right. Well, I mean, what do you when the like? Just let's take that as an example for a moment. When the tone, like you hit one key, right? You hit C, whatever,
Yeah.
and the tone it plays, and then it starts fading, and then as it's fading, you hit E, something like that, right? And that tone starts. You got like whatever the sine wave is, right? It starts cresting, right? What is it doing in your body in that moment where the one note is fading and the other note is rising?
Oh, that's a funny question because I'm so concentrated. I'm so aware of what's going to happen when I'm doing it, and I'm just curious what's going to happen. I'm just listening. And I think at the same time, it's a sort of yoga. It's a sort of meditation. Yeah.
I mean, when you were a child, were you this sensitive? Like, were you? You said your antenna was always up, and were you this kind of like aware of everything and everyone's emotions going on around you?
I was always very curious, and I was very, very because. Just short before the war, within the war, and after the war, it was a hard time for me. So I had to find out how to get food and something. When I was a child, I had to feed my family after the war as well because my father died in '48 on tuberculosis. So I had to overtake some responsibility for the family as well. So my awareness helped me to do my job.
I mean, you were what, 14 at that time when you had to become
Yeah. When my father died, I was he died 48. I was 14.
I mean, that's a huge. I mean, look, I can't even imagine what it's like to grow up in the middle of the biggest conflagration of the 20th century. But also, like, I have to imagine personally, like, right after that, that's a huge responsibility to take over for your family at the age of 14. I mean, maybe you already had, maybe your childhood was already kind of over by that point because of the war. I don't know.
It just happened, and I did it, and I was always. I knew always that somebody takes care of me. So it's not only me that is doing it because there's somebody, my Lord, who is doing it with me in a way. Mm-hmm. He's my shelter, the tree under this tree. Branches I am. So I always was sure that everything is okay with me, even so in hard times.
So there's both this kind of like existential duty, it seems, with you. Right? Like, this is what I am and this is who I am. And also this kind of like, a faith that also like kind of, lifts you up in that moment. Like, this is who I am and this is what I have to do. And I also have this kind of, this faith that helps me along. Is that right?
Yeah.
Tell me how off this is, if this is correct, or if this is like really kind of like far off, but like, is it just through this kind of like having to, deal with the war, having, it's one thing to be like a very sensitive person in like the best of times, right? Because you're constantly being attuned to other people. But I have to imagine like in the middle of a war that like people's emotions are like going kind of off all the time. So you both have like, you're in physical danger and you're also kind of like, there's also everyone's emotions that are kind of like going at a 10 all the time. Is that accurate?
I remember that even when the hard bombings on Berlin came down, I was with my sister in the basement and was sleeping. My sister was full of fear, and she had to transport me on her shoulders from the bed into the basement and from the basement to the bed, and I slept that's that's really weird. It's really weird.
So do you think you were just was that just that one moment, or do you think you were like that the entire
No, it
time?
was not. It was not all the time. Sometimes I was awake and I saw the bombings, and I saw the houses in fire, and I saw people dying. So, but as a child, you just get it. You look at it, you hear, but you are not aware what really is going to happen. It's just like looking in a film. For me at the time.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I when I started asking you about, like, when you started first becoming who you are. I do think about childhood in whatever circumstances someone is in. It does feel fuzzy, and I'm wondering at what point this stuff started to really have an impression upon you. Like, oh, this is life.
What I really remember is that I was always hungry after the war, and that I had to find food, that I had to go to the farmers to make some wood, to get the soup and something. But it was like being in a film. I was acting, I was receiving impressions, but it was like I was a collector of impressions, and I still am.
So and you were also, you were a child actor, right?
It was a child actor, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if that too also made an impression upon you. Even if, I think it was like early on in your life, right? I assume you don't remember much of it.
It was when I was 4 years. I remember it very well because it was the first occasion to learn how to lie in a perfect way that people believe, even when I was lying. I had to play a child, a sick child. I had to behave like I had headache, but I didn't want to do it. Because I asked my mother, "What shall I do? I have no headache. I don't want. I'm not sick. What should I do?" And then they gave me a lot of chocolate, and then I understood. Then I understood. Then I had headache, and then I was sick. But that was a bad experience, because that was the first time in my life when I was when I was aware of lying, of saying something which was not true.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a lot about of that. I learned a lot. I learned perfect lying. I learned to behave, to get out of bad situations afterwards, like in the Eastern Germany and in the Stasi, and when I was in prison. And it was a good experience for me to eat chocolate, even and even I wasn't sick. But no, a different way. That the film director wanted me to behave like a sick child, and I couldn't do it. But when I got chocolate, it worked. It worked. For them, obviously, I don't know whether I was a real headache-looking child.
Yeah, it seemed you seem like a very sincere person. So I have to imagine that it's like the kind of like the idea of deception does not sit well with you.
Mm-hmm.
Even though there was like a necessity to lying, right? Do you feel bad lying to people?
It doesn't happen yet anymore. It's not necessary anymore. Sometimes, smart lying is still allowed, I think. Smart lying to avoid bad situations.
Yeah,
I think that's allowed.
Have you always been a sincere person then, right? Even when you've had to lie for survival.
Yeah.
Other than that, do you try to be a sincere person? And does that come out of your faith?
I think I'm a sincere person, yes. Of course I think so. I'm serious. What I'm doing, and since that while, I think that's all serious and approachable for other people. I mean, the main thing is my music. The main thing is the way I'm writing, and talks like that. It's all witness for the seriousness of my personality.
I mean, did you play music at all prior to the I guess the 60s?
Yeah, my mother wanted me to play piano, but after the war it was impossible to pay the hours, so that just happened sometimes. But because the piano was also always out of tune, I didn't like to do it. But my mother wanted me to become a pianist. My grandfather, who was a dentist, he didn't want to go to take care of his clients because he liked piano playing so much that in the morning he sat at the piano and the people they had to carry him to his praxis to work. So I'm doing what he wanted to do. I'm doing.
Do you think that in any way influenced you?
Huh?
Do you think that influenced you, knowing your grandfather was
all these stories? Possibly, yes. Yeah.
Because I think about sometimes how children sometimes live out the dreams of their parents or their grandparents in some way.
Yeah. I said there is more than we can. There's more to think about. There's more in the game that we can realize. That's much more in reality to take care of and to try to get aware of. But we can't. There are some secrets we shouldn't open, perhaps also.
Yeah. I mean, were there moments? Let's just talk about maybe the post-war period. Were there moments of, just because I ask this because I find the music you make so beautiful, and I wonder if there are moments of like aesthetic beauty in the post-war period that stick out in your mind at all.
Aesthetic beauty.
Let me try to put this a different way. You know, you said you're a serious person, you're a sensitive person. And that I characterize it as duty, right? Like an unfurling, an unfolding of yourself. And I'm just wondering, along the way as this happens, are there moments of things that you can hold on to that later on in your life you're like, oh, this is beautiful, I remember this from this period, that stick in your mind?
For sure, but not in the moment. I think, of course, there are so many. I'm now on my way to be 87 next year. So there's so much in my brain stored that I must sometimes think, how do I get it together? How can I give the right answers? Because there's so much to think about in the moment, especially because of all the problems. We can't get out, we are locked down, we can't meet people, we have to take masks when we go out and somewhere. That's so hard to bear. It's really hard to bear. After all that, what I experienced, to be quiet now for a long time and can't do anything anymore, can't play live, and that's something.
Yeah. I just was it just kind of like in the post-war period, just putting one foot in front of the other and just moving forward?
Yeah. Living out of the moment. Yeah, living from moment to moment. That's the only solution.
There is a certain sense in which, the 20th century was this, the 20th century into the 21st century was this kind of the metaphor of the two keys you were talking about, playing one key. The 20th century was that note descending. Mm-hmm. And we're still waiting for the new note to start playing. And we're in this moment where we are in this kind of the last moments of a note playing, and we don't know when the next note is going to be played.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
it's a weird metaphor, but it's just like it
It's
feels
a metaphor, a good metaphor, a good metaphor.
I can only see this. I'm kind of curious about your. Not just talking to you because I love your music so much, but because I only have access to the 20th century from like the last part of it, right? I was born in 1979, so I don't really, I wasn't really a person until like the early 90s, and even then, I wasn't really paying much attention until well after that. And I'm kind of curious, having lived through it, how does the full 20th century strike you?
I'm born 1934. As I said, I went through the Hitler time, the communist time, and now we are sitting here with all what we know about what happened. So we just can look to it and try to behave in a good way, to respect nature and its necessities. And if everybody's doing it, then it would work. But unfortunately, many people think that production will come back, more cars, more fight machines. They have to be. It won't change anything if not everybody changes his mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, do you feel things are like you lived literally through like some of the worst parts of the 20th century? Do you feel things are getting better from your point of view?
Biden is a good sign for does it coming to become better. That's really a positive sign. My God, after all that shit, what Trump did, this man, old man like me, a little bit younger than me.
Well, it's certainly like, I do think it's interesting. It's certainly like a repudiation of the worst parts of America, right? It's certainly like the worst, the far right, the kind of like American Nazis don't have a voice anymore. They did have a voice for 4 years, and now they don't have a voice in government.
Yeah.
And that's a huge step. I'm pretty far left, but like, I voted for Biden, but I'm not like a huge fan of his, but just to stop giving a voice to the worst parts of America, I think is hugely important.
Yeah. That's the most important thing. Don't give them any voice. Yeah.
How is your feeling towards art, towards making art changed over your life? How's your
art?
Yeah, your attitude towards making art.
My whole life is art. It's the art of becoming aware how to make art, so that others can become aware that art is a good gift to bring peace and love and understanding and respect.
I mean, besides playing music, playing piano when you were a child, were there other moments? Were there moments of levity, of joy? Were there moments of creativity? I know life goes on. I've talked to many people who either lived through World War II in the UK or in France, or the Hungarian Revolution, or the war in Iran. And a lot of the things people say is like, life still goes on even during wartime. You still live your life. And I'm kind of curious, were there moments of joy and creativity for you during this period?
I think I was always optimistic that we become once in the future the ones God wants us to be. It needs some time to become, to know what's necessary to be done for most of the people. So we have to wait, we have to be patient. Jesus says, I only can say it in German. I mean, I'm optimistic.
I know a little German.
You should be very optimistic after Biden is the king of the emperor of the unit, is the man who's uniting the different positions in America. That's a great thing, a great change. That's so great. I think that people will realize it soonest when he's inaugurated in the White House. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, even in the time, like, from the age of when you were 14, were there moments where you got to be creative?
To be
before you started playing music professionally, let's say, between the ages of 14, when you kind of had to support your family, did you get to have moments of creativity, or was it just about survival at that time? Yeah.
At that time, yeah.
When did you get to become creative again? Was it when you became a physical therapist?
Yes, of course. It's very creative to work with people. I think I was always a little bit creative because I always took care of my family, and I'm great adorer of nature. When I was a child, then I was not only in the forest to enjoy nature, I was there for picking mushrooms and wild fruit, but it was always in connection to the nature, though. That was two things at once that helped me to be happy and to trust that's going on.
Yeah. I mean, also to be a physical therapist, I would think you have to be rooted in your own body. You have to know yourself in some way. Is that true?
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
And you have to be sure about that that you love people and that you want to help them, of course.
Do you think you were always like that? Do you think you were always pretty aware of your body and of yourself, and because you said you like nature, you were aware of nature, you were a sensitive person. That doesn't always mean that you were aware of your own body and aware of yourself.
Oh yes, of course. I think I was aware of myself. I knew that whatever I do is somehow under the shelter of my beloved Lord. So even so, sometimes it wasn't really right what I did. I knew that if I see it and be aware of it, that is, was heißt Verzeihung? That it wouldn't be taken on my list of mistakes and given to me after my death. Oh, you did this and this and this. Which you forgot to tell about.
Did you come out of the war period wanting to help people?
Not really. No. Out of the war period, I was a juvenile. I was a young boy, a teen, and had to fight to survive with my family. And then I had to go to school, and then I had to go to the army because I was not allowed to stay away from the army in East Germany. I mean, I had to do things I wouldn't have done, but the state, I had to be a soldier, and because of that, I deserted from the army after a year, and then I went to the West, but my parents wanted me back because I was so young, and they wanted me in the circle of the family, and I went back, and I went to jail, and all these things. It's just now when I look at it, it was just the process of learning about myself, where to go, in which way to behave, to be somebody who is not selfishly doing everything for himself.
So it was really that moment where you kind of became, were you religious before that moment? Or do you think that's the moment when you became? I
always was when my aunt took me into, I was evangelic baptized. When my aunt took me in a Catholic church, I thought that's my home, not the evangelic. It's so dry. It was not no smell, no light, no candles, no. So I think there was something from the beginning.
But like, when did you feel like you became, when you were like, I want to do things that will help heal other people, right? Whether it's through physical therapy or making music. Like, when do you think your attitude towards that appeared or became, or, when you like turned towards that?
I think it was always in the underground. It was from the beginning always there that I'm just part of a community and have to behave like a part of the community for the sake of the community, of course. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that seems really grounded in your faith then. So at the core, even at the bottom, is really like this deep faith and also this kind of like love of nature or appreciation of nature.
Yeah. I'm so happy that that's like that. Oh God, what a gift.
Yeah. And those two things, like, it's not like those come from different things. Those are both entwined together. Right? It's not like your faith and your appreciation of nature. It's not like those are two like different paths, two parallel things. Those are both very close.
Yeah.
They come from a very like
they shake hands.
Yeah, that comes from like the same kind of. So like really, that's kind of. I mean, I'm saying this. Tell me if it's true or not. Like that's kind of the core of where that, or the foundation of where like you have come from.
Yeah.
And then through that, whether it's, coming back for your family's sake, coming back from West Germany for your family's sake, or becoming a physical therapist to help people, or making music that helps people. Yeah. It all comes back to that kind of core in some way.
But doing it sometimes it's very egomanic. I'm reckless. When I want to do something, I don't let anybody in. I close the door and I'm doing it, even though I should bring the trash out and clean the door, clean the rooms. I'm doing it. This is very egomanic. So there I'm selfish.
Well, I think it's interesting that like there are these two. I've thought about this a lot. To like make anything, to be creative, and especially to be creative as a profession, requires you to be kind of an egomaniac in some way. But at the same time, you do it because you, in the best of senses, you do it because you think it is connecting you with other people. Yeah. And it connects other people.
Wouldn't work. Yeah. Otherwise, it wouldn't work.
Yeah. So I think it's a really weird kind of being to have, right? To have these two kind of like competing I think the most creativity happens in the tension between those two things. Mm-hmm. Between your ego and your sense of duty to other people. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's true for yourself? Your creativity, the things you make happen in this area between like you doing it for yourself selfishly and also for other people.
Yeah, but it's not my fault. I'm doing it because I want to do it.
Right. Again, I think it's complex. We can't just like boil it down to one thing.
It's perfect. It fits.
I mean, has your attitude from the 60s up through now, has the way you make music changed, or has your attitude towards making music changed?
No, the attitude didn't change. I'm doing it out of the moment. I don't prepare anything. In the contrary, I avoid exercising. I'm just going when it's going to happen by itself. I'm not in that way. I'm not a professional musician or composer. No, I don't know what I am. I'm doing it the way I'm doing it, and I think that's the best way I can do.
Yeah. Well, you seem like a very present person. You're extremely like in the moment in a way that I'm very rarely like that. Right? I'm always like I'm completely anxious. I'm always thinking about the future and about what's going to happen. And I'm kind of wondering if like have you always been this present?
As I said, I told you already. I said I have a deep trust in my Lord.
And that's really weird.
He's going to help me in the way I have to do it. I know, but I can't do it without him and his shelter. I can't do anything without his agreement.
That's a really nice way to put it. Thank you so much for talking to me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for being interested.
Yeah. Like I said, your music is very meaningful to me. So thank you. Thanks again.
Thanks for being with me for a while.
Yeah, thanks so much.
And thanks for being with me when you listen to my music.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, oh, 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 bye. Bye.